The knife is a Spyderco Shaman in CPM CruWear. This is an exclusive from the knifejoker.com. The knife has a black DLC coated blade in CruWear and a forest green G10 handle. The Shaman is a model that I was looking forward to picking up for a long time, but I didn't want to pick up the S30V version. The first time I handled one, I was in a store in Pennsylvania called Old Country Knives, and I had seen the Shaman and I'd heard about it, and it was one that I had interest in, but I was really holding out for sprint runs and exclusives and that kind of thing. I was in Old Country Knives and they had a Shaman there, and I asked them if I could see it, and they let me see it, and I was very surprised at the weight of the knife and the build of the knife, but I was pleased with it, and I thought that it would be a very interesting model, and I thought it was an interesting idea for Spyderco to take on, because it's different than a lot of what you see from them. I was also of the opinion that CruWear was the ideal steel for the knife. Not that there's anything wrong with S30V, it's just the knife has a very heavy-duty build to it. It feels like a very substantial knife. And I just thought that CruWear, being a very tough steel that also sharpened very well, would be, I mean, if I was making the judgment call, it's the steel that I would have put on the knife from the jump. CruWear is, or CPM CruWear is a steel made by Crucible. It's 1.1 carbon, 7.5 chromium, 2.4 vanadium, 1.15 tungsten, and 1.6 moly. It's got about 10% carbide overall, so it's very, very tough, but it still gets pretty hard. Spyderco usually takes their CruWear into the low 60s. So if I had to guess, and this is just a wild ass guess, but I would guess that the Shamans that we're seeing are 61, 62 Rockwell. CruWear sharpens very well, and that's an aspect of the steel that I like very much. With the build of this knife, the handle being G10, it's very smooth, but given the ergonomics of the knife, it doesn't feel like the smoothness of the G10 is going to challenge the use of the knife. The blade is a little over 3.5 inches. The cutting edge is a little over 3 inches. The blade is almost 4 millimeters thick. It's 3.7 millimeters thick, and it's a high flat saber grind. So towards the spine of the knife, you do actually have a section where it's flat. It's fairly thick behind the edge, so that's going to be something to consider in, consequent sharpenings of the knife, is that you're going to have, if you keep that angle low, you're going to have the size of the bevel grow a little bit. This has been sharpened once, and it's already, the bevel is about as large as I would normally go. Now, what I can do is I can drop that angle down, or actually raise the angle up as I go through sharpenings, and that'll decrease this, how it looks, the size of it sitting against the rest of the blade. Being that we're dealing with CruWear, I'm not too worried about the knife still taking a very good edge if I step the angle up little by little. Not something I would normally do, but I mean, again, given the build of the knife, this isn't a dedicated slicer. This is really, I don't know, meant for heavy use, at least for me as a customer. I really like the color combination here. I think that the forest green came out really good on it. It's a really nice dark green. It's all black hardware. I think Spyderco did a good job with it. The DLC coating, I think, is interesting. One of the things that I'm looking forward to, and I can already see this a little bit with this model just from what I've done for this video, but I'm wondering how much this blade is going to show wear on it. If you think back to the River's Edge Cutlery exclusive Para 3 and 204P, an interesting aspect of that DLC coating was that the knife showed use on the blade and then cleaned up very well. But anything, it seemed like with that River's Edge exclusive, anything you cut, you could see that you had done it on the blade. And it was great for the look of the knife. It was great for photographs. So I'm wondering how this DLC coating will hold up and how much it's going to pick up use on the blade. But the fact that it's coated in DLC, that's fine. CruWear is not stainless. And while it's never been an issue with CruWear staining, at least for me, I've never had a corrosion issue with CruWear, I don't mind the idea that this blade is blacked out. I wanted to do some cutting for this video. I wanted to get some use in with it and really check the ergonomics of the knife. I had held the knife, and in fact, this isn't the first Shaman that I've got. I've got the CruWear Micarta Shaman that Spyderco put out, which is an unbelievable knife. So I thought that this would be an interesting addition. That Micarta version, you know, the handle's Micarta, so it's not G10, so it's kind of a different thing. But I really, in getting this, I really have been looking at it as, I really want this to be something that I put through a lot of use. I want it to sit in that category for me. So I really want to get some cutting in for this video and really push it with the ergonomics and see what I could find. I started in on wood, cutting into wood, and I was using the factory edge for all this cutting, and I was surprised at how well the knife dug into wood. Now, part of that may be that with this design, with this knife, between the build of the handle, you know, full steel liners, the stop pin being substantial, the blade being close to 4 millimeters thick on the spine, and the fact that it's CruWear and it's thick behind the edge, I really had a lot of confidence going into this cutting. I'm not using a PM2 in S110V. I'm using a knife that you can really do some digging with it, and it's not going to be a problem. But it cut very well. It really went into the wood well and did a good job with it. After the wood, I cut some cardboard. I worked with some light cardboard, and I worked with some heavy cardboard. Wasn't an issue at all. The factory edge held up just fine. After the cardboard, I wanted to work with wood again, doing some fine cutting. Now that I had gone through wood for a while and I had worked with some cardboard, some more abrasive material, I went back to wood to do fine cutting, and the knife was doing excellent with it. Again, just the factory edge, but it was doing a great job, and I was very pleased with it. I also wanted to see how the knife would do with cutting outside of a hammer grip. So just a less conventional hold on the knife and what that would be like. After the fine wood cutting, I moved on to rope, working with some manila rope, some thick pieces, some thin pieces. Edge was still doing great, blowing through the rope. I'm not going to say that the ergonomics of this knife are perfect. They're not. But I wouldn't exactly call what I found hot spots. I was doing some very heavy cutting and really pushing it with this knife in the grip, and the ergonomics held up fine. I think it'll make for a great work knife. When the cutting was done, I needed to resharpen the knife. I've been using Veneve's Diamond Waterstones quite a bit lately. Recently, I've been in several different group chats with different sharpeners, different ideas floating around, different things discussed. And in some of these chats, there's even challenges that go back and forth, and you know, sharpening challenges, cutting challenges. And in the midst of all that, I started experimenting with adding DMT plates into the sharpenings that I was doing. Most of what I was doing was stuff with K390, but you know, nonetheless, I had this knife to sharpen, and so I thought I would go a different way from what I've done in the last several videos. So for the sharpening of this, I started with a DMT course. Working with DMTs, especially starting with a course, really allows me to sort out a bevel and set it up the way that I want it set up. This came in at about 34 inclusive. It was between 30 and 35, and that's what I could measure. I'm gonna guess 34. 34 is not an uncommon measure for Spydercos to be sharpened at. After and the blade was good, the edge was good. It wasn't hair whittling, but it was a very good edge. After the DMT course, I moved on to a DMT fine. I worked with that. After the fine, I moved on to a medium extra fine. The DMT medium extra fine it's a strange stone. It's got a strange name. But it's one that I really, really enjoy a lot. And it's an expensive stone and it's hard to find. When I found it, it was on Amazon, and I don't think that it's usually there. At least it hasn't been there times in the past that I've looked. But I had found it, and I thought about it a little bit, and I went ahead and picked it up. I think it was over $100 when I picked it up. And I'm not sure. I mean, it almost feels less gritty than my extra fine. I'm not sure if I just got a good one or if all medium extra fines are made as well as this one is. But I know that when it wears out, it's one that I'm going to be picking up again. I worked with the medium extra fine, and then I moved on to a Ken Schwartz 3K diamond plate. Ken Schwartz diamond plate, his 3K plate, I finally got one that's full size. And the Ken Schwartz 3K is really, at this point for me, I consider it a staple sharpening element in my diamond plate sharpenings. It really sets you up for a finishing stone. It really is a nice final diamond plate. It seems as if it puts a finer finish than a DMT extra fine or medium extra fine. I don't know about grit rating. I don't know about micron size or whatever of the diamond particles. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what it does to the knife, what I actually see in sharpening. So, I mean, diamond plates as opposed to water stones, as opposed to diamond water stones, you can have different grit ratings, but the stones cut differently from one type to the next. And that's something that really needs to be experienced by a sharpener to really be making an assessment on them. And what I'm saying is this 3K diamond plate, I really enjoy what it actually does to the knife. I'm not making arguments about grit rating. I will say that it's been checked. According to Ken, it's been checked, and it really does leave a 3000 grit finish, comparable to what other 3K stones do. But for me, for my purposes, I like using Ken's 3K diamond plate as a setup to a finishing stone. In this case, what I was finishing with was the Veneve 1200 grit OCB. I'm still finding it very much ideal as a finishing stone. So I worked with the 1200 grit. The polish really comes up. The edge really comes up nice. And it's similar to what you get when you do a full Veneve progression. But coming off the diamond plates seems to leave a little bit more bite, a little bit more aggression on the edge, while still having it come up polished off the 1200. After the 1200, I moved on to a 1 micron diamond strap on leather, and then I finished with a 1/10 of a micron diamond strap on leather. The final edge, much like previous sharpenings, finishing with that 1200 grit and doing a 1/10, the final edge was, in most places on the blade, so sharp that it was difficult to whittle hair. I had to fight to get footage of it because the knife just wanted to blow through the hairs. It's an interesting thing because, what looks best on video is hair whittling footage, but in reality, when you're going through the hair on contact, that's a sharper edge than a hair whittling edge. So I'm very pleased with the whole thing. I was pleased with the function of the knife. I like the aesthetic of it. I'm looking forward to using it. I think it's great that the Knife Joker finally got their first exclusive out, and I was glad that I picked one up. I think that Spyderco did a good job with it.